Hi guys, and welcome to a new YouTube video. Today we're going to be talking about how to improve your realism techniques using colored pencils. If this eye looks familiar, it's because we worked on it in my previous video, which was how to draw a realistic eye in colored pencils, but today we're going to work on improving that. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about how or what people do wrong when working with colored pencils. So the first thing is people are afraid to go dark. And what I mean by that is people are afraid to push the, not boundaries, but push those shadows into being dark enough. In the previous video I mentioned a lot about how you need to make sure your lights are light enough and your darks are dark enough, and by that I mean your values in your work, so your color values are correct. And if you will do a little comparison at the end of the video, but really what the video yesterday was lacking, and I did this on purpose because I wanted to show you how you can improve your realism, is it was lacking tonal values. So it was lacking a difference in dark in your dark shadows and your light highlights, basically. So the first thing I worked on, which we've passed already, is on the white of the iris. I darkened those grey shadows quite a bit, which has helped, because most people would do what I did in the previous video, is do a little bit of shadow, but they're scared to go darker because they don't think that that's really what's happening. But if you study your reference image closely, you'll see that those shadows are actually quite dark. And that's what you really need to push for when you're doing realism. And then here I'm just working on darkening and adding more pigment to the skin, which is going to lead to my next little tip or trick or whatever, to helping with your color pencil pieces, and that is to do with blending. So here I come in with a paintbrush and I use Zest It, which is OMS, so it's odorless mineral spirits, and I use a very little bit and I damp off excess onto a paper towel, and then I just blend the colored pencil. Oh, excuse me. Then I just go about and I blend that pigment into the page. Now this will differ depending on what paper you use. So the best way to do this is to make sure you have enough pigment on your page before you go in with OMS. Because if you don't have enough pigment, not much is going to happen and nothing's really going to blend. Now look how this picture has already improved, because it kind of leaves your drawing looking a bit more painterly, because all those colors now have just blended and you don't really get that white grain showing through on your page anymore. Now there are obviously other techniques you can use to avoid this, such as burnishing, etc. I just like the OMS method because it doesn't damage the tooth. If I want to add more layers later, I can do that really easily. And there are many different OMS what they call products on the market. When I went to my first art store that was nearby, I just happened to see Zest It, and that's what I use, and I just pour some out into a separate little jug so that I don't contaminate the full bottle with any leftover pigment that might be on my brush. So I go around everywhere, and I make, if I'm working on a different area, for example the iris now, I'll make sure to wipe off any leftover pigment so that that blue doesn't go into the skin or anything like that. This is just sped up so you don't really see me wiping off the brush between these different parts of the eye. Okay, sometimes I don't, I'm bad. But mainly I do. Okay, and I'm just going to blend the eyebrow a bit. and any paintbrush will work. It doesn't really matter. I wouldn't suggest too much of a soft paintbrush. Like the one I'm using here is a bit soft, just because you're going to work a lot harder to get things blended. But yeah, also maybe use an older paintbrush, because the OMS can damage your paintbrush. So then you need to wait for it to dry completely, because if you don't wait for it to dry, you will damage your paper when you come back with color pencils. And now I am just adding some more layers, which is the second thing people do wrong. I don't like using that word, but yeah, if you want to improve your color pencils, don't stop too soon. Keep adding layers and keep working on your art piece, because the more layers you add, the better results you're going to get. Remember, colored pencils are transparent, so the more layers you add, the better it's going to be, and all those colors are going to shine through each layer and just add to the depth and the realism of your piece. So here I'm just defining more of the eye, going darker with those shadows, adding more colors I see, and earlier I was adding more layers to the skin, just to really push the shadows and just to add more pigment so that we get nice rich layers and pigment coming through, all adding to the realism of your piece. Also, I apologize that it's very overexposed. The lighting today here was really bad. It's been a really miserable, dark day, and I had my light on and I didn't check when I was recording how bright the footage was, which was my bad. Alright, so basically I'm just going to be adding a few more layers onto this piece, and then I might do one more layer of OMS just to blend it out, so that it can become nice and smooth. And that's gonna finish it up, really. Right, so that brings us to the end of the tutorial, and here I thought I'd just put up a comparison between yesterday's video, or the last video I did, to this one. And I'm hoping you can see the differences. I certainly can. If you notice, the iris is the shadows I've pushed a lot more. I've made them darker, especially the grays around this area. I've just darkened up this image in general and tried to keep the lights on the highlights nice and bright, and you can do that by darkening up your shadows, because those two are going to play off one another. And then the OMS, you can especially see here in the skin, I have blended it out nice and smoothly, which just helps with the realism. Anyway guys, that's enough me rambling. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to give it a like or a thumbs up, and consider subscribing if you want to. Anyway, bye guys.